Just one thing
Sharp.
that I would like to say. Just one thing
Going down.
that I would like to say.
This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing. Okay. So, I'm going to read something to you from CNN Politics. President Joe Biden signed into law Tuesday landmark new federal protections for same-sex and interracial couples, capping both a personal and national evolution on an issue that's enjoyed growing acceptance over the past decade. Sounds great. But I realized something. Once we got to talking about interracial marriage, the comments sections started to look unexpected to me. There are a lot of people that don't love this, and they're not the people you might think. Of course, I think that the people that I was paying particular attention to, they are in favor of it, provided it's not around them and it's not a specific coupling. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that group of people. We're going to talk about perhaps why this is such a sensitive issue. And I want to ask 3 questions that I need help with. And I'd love for you to reach out to me with your thoughts, because I'm trying to learn myself. I don't understand everything, and I'm always trying to learn. So, who are we talking about? Well, we are talking about, often enough, Black women. And I recognize that the world in which we live has espoused European beauty standards for hundreds of years over the beauty standards one might find in a place like Africa, in our native land. And that's been challenging for Black women to compete with, because in a lot of ways, we are made different. Our hair is curly. My hair certainly is. And far be it for me to straighten it, permanently. And for those that might want to straighten it, there's a whole process to that. And if you do it too often, it damages your hair. That's just step 1. We could talk about noses, lips, figures. We can talk about lightening creams and all these things that Black women have experimented with over centuries to try to reach that beauty standard, to be accepted, not just in a romantic capacity, but in a general societal capacity. I recognize that. I want to make sure that that's stated. I also want to make sure that it's stated that this isn't exclusively a Black woman's issue, but what turned me on to it was seeing the Black women and their comments when this was announced, and all the media outlets ran the story. So I started doing more research and found out that in America, 87% of people surveyed approve of interracial marriage. No problem. Until it comes to their immediate family. Because when the question is, would you approve of an interracial marriage by your sister, child, etc., that number goes from 87% down to 54%. And it goes even lower for white people. So I recognize that Black women are not the only ones who take issue here, but there's a specific coupling. I think you know which coupling I'm referring to, that is, in my estimation, based off what I know, particularly troubling to Black women. That coupling is a Black man with a white woman. I recognize that Black women, if I'm painting with broad strokes, would rather see Black men with Black women. I recognize that Black women are the least married type of human being in the world. Either they're the least married type of woman, definitely, but Black women and Asian men in this country, I know that they go back and forth one or two, first or second place. So I recognize that being unmarried is not the state that many women want to remain in perpetually. And so recognizing these things is very important so that I can kind of help ask the questions in a way that I think will land a little bit better. Now, there are some people who are very much champions of Black women, and I enjoy listening to these people. I think they're profound speakers. One who comes to mind is Dr. Umar Johnson. And, I have sisters who are Black women, and everyone else in my family who's older is either married or gone. But I will say that I love my sisters with my whole heart. They lighten me up in ways I couldn't even begin to share with you. My family, I have the best family. And one of my sisters is now married, but for a long time she wasn't. And my other sister is unmarried. And so when I listen to Dr. Umar Johnson, I listen to him and people like him, Elijah Muhammad, etc. The list goes pretty deep. But when I listen to these folks, my sisters give me access to that conversation. And what I do recall Dr. Johnson saying is that marriage is an institution that serves the state, and that it is an economic institution. It is a forum that ensures birth legitimacy and the transfer of wealth and resources, right? And so when you look at it like that, and you look at Black wealth, you recognize that this is a tool, instrument, mechanism, forum that could be used to fortify and bolster the Black community from that perspective. Makes sense. But this issue goes even deeper than that, because it's not just about whether or not marriage is legal. The comments that I saw weren't talking exclusively about marriage. In fact, they were talking about even dating, or even less than that. I don't know what to call it, hooking up, associating, not sure where the line is there. But if it's a Black man and a white woman, it's particularly troubling, it seems, right? And again, this is not news to me, but I never found myself asking deep enough questions to really understand it. And I feel like together, as I always say, we can figure this out. There's another trope that exists. Successful Black men often run off and marry a white woman, which again, I recognize how that can be problematic. If what we're talking about is exclusively ensuring birth legitimacy and transferring wealth and resources, But there's another question there. If a black man marries a white woman in this case, or really any non-black person, we still reckon those children black children. I have two sons, and where I grew up, most of the population is Hispanic. So most of the dating pool were Mexican people. And my sons are half black and half Mexican. But if you looked at them or talked to them, they're black kids. And I never questioned that, never thought twice about it. And so at some point, while I recognize this, I recognize that there's something to be said about what happens to the birth legitimacy and the legacy and the wealth transfer. The sum total of my resources will go to two black men. Hopefully they'll be old men by the time I pass away. Just the same. So it's like I get it, and also I don't. And I'd love to know what I don't get, because I wake up every day and I do my best to be better. I do my best to understand more. I love my sons. I wouldn't change a thing about them, but that's my reality where I grew up. But then that brings me to the next point. So at the time when I was in these relationships, throughout my life, but in particular, when I'm talking about my child's mother, my assessment of, the value of that relationship wasn't based on race as much as it was based on, is this a good person? Is this person good to me? Do we have fun together? Do we laugh at the same jokes? Do we have the same values? Are we in sync? Do we argue in a way that is constructive and not destructive? Fundamental, foundational questions that are wildly, vastly more important, in my estimation, than, is this person black? Yes? Okay, sufficient. Onward. And I know that nobody is saying that you should only date someone because they are black or if they are black. But I do recognize that it's a complicated sort of thing. And any two people that find each other, fall in love, and make it down the aisle are very lucky, in my opinion. I do not see the value in the institution of marriage, and have committed to my family that I will never marry. It's only bad. That's all I can see. It feels like a trap that you sign up for. And I don't want to harp on it, because I do recognize a lot of people really love being married. And it makes me very happy to see that, because I think in my heart of hearts, I'm a romantic. But I'm also a very practical man. And I recognize that there's a lot of risk associated with that. And the way that my feelings are set up, I just as soon stay on this side of that, line. But with that said, my first question, what does race matter if the person that you choose to marry or date is a good person? Or how about this? I'll ask the same question a different way. What does race matter if the person that you're marrying is a bad person? I feel like that's an important question. I've seen it from both sides. I've heard it from both sides, from black women. They see a black man walking at a mall or into a movie, holding the hand of a white woman. I've heard and seen exactly how those reactions can look. I've also heard from the man, the black man, in that same scenario, more or less, what it feels like to hold the hand of a woman that you love and walk by another woman that you love in a different way, and have this black woman who you love in a different way be so angry with you for finding happiness, and it just happens to look like this, right? And I don't want to make light of it, but I'm trying to articulate that in this scenario, what this particular man's feelings might be. And I'll add to that, I've even talked to the white woman or the non-black woman in the equation as well. How this person might feel. 40 years is not a short amount of time. This is a decent amount of time to be living. Enough experiences to know how to articulate how these people could feel, have felt in stories that I've heard, been a part of myself. And it seems like sort of a stalemate, but certainly a good question, or I should say 2 questions to ponder. But I'll move on to my next question, another one I'd like you to ponder. And again, think about it and talk to me. I'm here to learn and I'm here to share my thoughts. Question number 2. What if they live somewhere where there are only a few black people? The dating pool for other black people is very small. Should a person, if they don't find a candidate who is black that happens to work good enough for them, should they be alone to appease everyone else? The answer could be yes. It could be. But again, going back, if marriage serves the state and it's an economic institution ensuring birth legitimacy and wealth transfer, who wins, who loses when marriage is off the table entirely? Is it just to be separatist? I just don't want to see it because it makes me uncomfortable. I just don't like that because I don't have it. And the I don't have it part brings me to my next question. Why is it that this is an issue with black men dating outside of their race? And we don't see as much when it comes to black women. I know that this is true. I know the statistics. I've covered it on the show. But the whys are so elusive. And I know that there are smarter people out there than me. I know there are people who have read more books, who have done more research. But why is it the case that black women tend to shy away from advances from non-black men, white men, Asian men, Hispanic men, etc.? Maybe there's a person who doesn't have 17 baby mamas, and there's a person who makes 6 figures, a person who is tall and wear exercises and just doesn't have the melanin. Might even be culturally competent. I grew up listening to the same music as you, dancing the same, But why is it just on its face, if this person's race is not the same as mine, it's an automatic no? And I get that some people, that's a hard line. It's just a preference and so forth and so on. But if it's a preference, and it's okay to have a preference, when you ask the man in my earlier example who's walking into the movie theater holding the hand of a white woman, and he says there's a preference there, why is that the wrong preference? Now, I know there are problems. I know there are issues that, a fortified black family can address, certainly can help. I know that history tells this story. Strong black families make strong black communities. This I know. Okay. But there's a lot of things that need to go into a strong black family. One of them is marriage. But what I saw were comments of people that just didn't like the idea of dating, didn't like the idea of anything. If you are not married to a Black woman and you are a Black man, you are failing the Black community. So what does that say about gay Black men? Where is the line? What are the rules? What is the narrative here? What if this were being said about us? Now, normally in these types of talks, I have a lot more to offer, and I apologize that I have more questions today. But again, this is a conversation. It was always conceived to be a conversation when Chris first thought of this idea for us doing this version rather of the show. And so I'd like to lean into that today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is a conversation that we can have for a long time. This is a place where we can make some progress and gain some understanding. This is something that matters. And I would love to hear from you. So reach out to me. I am on all social media at Ramses Ja. And of course, you can use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. I'll be standing by. And until I hear from you, peace. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice, from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.